Dinah Laurel Lance, daughter of original Black Canary Dinah Drake, protector of Star City, and lover of Oliver Queen since her earliest appearance after the Crisis on Infinite Earth. An iconic comic book heroine, Dinah Laurel Lance has worn the mantle of Black Canary for decades, and so it was only fitting that the Arrowverse include her in its titular show. Better known on the series as Laurel, she emerged as a rich and multifaceted character, shown to be independent, fierce, and righteous, not afraid to call out the hero of the show or put herself in danger in order to protect others.
Dinah Laurel Lance, always trying to save the world.
Hey, if I don't try and save it, who will?
Laurel should have gone on to be an amazing character, with a well-built arc and an evolving relationship with Oliver Queen. Everything her original counterpart was in comic continuity. Yet something went terribly wrong, and instead of being celebrated for the character she was, Laurel Lance often received hatred, ridicule, and disdain, not only from the fandom of the show, but from the writers themselves.
Dinah Laurel Lance. Selfish bitch. You're not a hero. You're a liar, a fraud, and an addict.
Laurel was always a layered character, and her strength and determination always shone through. From the beginning, she was a champion of the underdog, had a strong moral compass, and refused to let people get away with treating herself or others badly. She was unafraid to stand up to characters such as Tommy and Oliver, yet at the same time, she showed them compassion and empathy when they needed it. She was tenacious and willing to put herself in danger in order to help those in need, showed great resilience from the trauma of her past, and always picked herself up when she fell down.
I'm not gonna pretend that I've been through anything that you have. One thing that I've learned in the past year is that these things, they don't break us. They make us who we are.
She was a multifaceted and rich character, and yet the audience ignored and shunned her, passing her over in favour of two other prominent female characters, self-insert character Felicity Smoke, and younger sister and foil to Laurel, Sarah Lance. For the first season of Arrow, Felicity Smoke was a blank slate character, a fairly underdeveloped Genki girl whom the audience could project their own personalities onto and identify with because of this. As much as fandoms demand layered and nuanced female characters, they often tend to reject these characters in favour of the Felicity Smokes, characters whom they can use as self-inserts and who then grow in popularity because of this. The writers of Arrow followed the lead of the audience, catering to their desires, and as a result, Felicity rose in profile while Laurel was slowly but surely punished and forgotten by the narrative. More egregious was the fandom's and the showrunners' love for Sarah Lance, a character who started the series by helping her sister's boyfriend cheat on her and was then idealized and worshipped by her father at the expense of her sister.
Why would I yell? You're only defending the man that killed your sister.
Oliver did not kill Sarah.
If it wasn't for him, she wouldn't have been on that boat.
Have you considered the possibility that that's the reason you're trying to make him out to be this menace?
In order to put their own spin on the character and the mythology, the Arrow writers decided that Laurel's Black Canary would not be a successor to her mother, but rather to her sister, and had Sarah first wear the mantle. Thanks to her compelling backstory and anti-hero slant, Sarah was extremely well received by audiences, with many fans clamoring for her to become the permanent Canary.
Sarah, please, please. Your sister. And why are you trying to take my place?
The fact that her introduction and backstory ran parallel to Laurel's poorly received descent into alcoholism and addiction meant that Sarah's popularity easily eclipsed her sister's, and when she was abruptly called off in the season 3 opener, fans were outraged. Thanks to Sarah's popularity and tenure as the Black Canary, Laurel's journey to becoming the hero she was always supposed to be was fraught with negative reactions from the fandom, along with setbacks within the narrative. Her first outing as the Black Canary seemed to almost be a punishment for her audacity to take on the title which her sister wore so well. Instead of triumphing over an abusive predator, Laurel was beaten down and almost killed, in a scene which felt uncomfortably as if the writers were enjoying dishing out violence on the character in response to the comic canon forcing them to turn Laurel into the Black Canary.
This is crazy. What the hell were you thinking going after that ghost boyfriend?
There's just something I need to work out. I know that the world isn't fair. I know that it's a terrible place where
where people deserve to get punished, and they don't.
It soon became apparent that the writers of Arrow were not wholly on board with Laurel becoming the Black Canary, having been so enamored with the response Sarah got in the role that they came to resent Laurel for taking on the mantle. Despite this always being the title she was supposed to have, Laurel was mocked, ridiculed, and berated for pursuing the vigilante life. Her father actively discouraged her efforts, and her former lover Oliver not only flatly refused to help train her, but also berated her intentions, claiming that she was only taking on the Black Canary mantle out of grief over her sister, while conveniently forgetting that he himself was motivated into the life due to grief and regret over his father's death and prior actions.
What you're doing is selfish.
Fighting for your city isn't selfish. It's what a hero would do.
You're not a hero.
Despite obstacles, Laurel persisted, showing that while the writers seemed to resent pushing her into the Black Canary role, they were resigned to doing so. As Laurel trained with Wildcat and later with Nyssa Al Ghul, her popularity in the fandom started to rise, especially once she formed a deep friendship with Nyssa. By the end of Season 3, Laurel had become a fully fledged member of Team Arrow, and Oliver tasked her with keeping the city safe when he left with Felicity at the season's end. Laurel's persistence, bravery, and determination to be worthy of the Black Canary title redeemed her in the eyes of a fandom who had always struggled with her character.
You have a light inside of you that Sarah never had. So, maybe you should stop trying to be Sarah and just be yourself.
With the fandom finally coming on board with Laurel's character, and with the climb in popularity of the Felicity ship and Felicity Smoke's character, Season 4 should have been the perfect time for the show to focus more on Laurel and potentially rebuild her romantic relationship with Oliver. Unfortunately, the writers had something else in mind. Season 4 of Arrow opened with Oliver visiting a grave in a scene implying a deeply personal loss for the Green Arrow. The identity of the body in the grave was kept hidden from the audience, and this became the main mystery of the season. While many theories were floated, few expected the reveal to be Laurel, unceremoniously shot with a single arrow by Dark and later dying in the hospital from a seizure as a result of her wounds. Laurel's death sent the Arrow fandom into a frenzy, not least because she was killed off for nothing more than shock value, and her death served little purpose in the main narrative or in her own arc. Her final scene with Oliver angered many fans, with the writers choosing to give Laurel's final moments not to herself and her relationship with Oliver, but to the Felicity ship in a shameless plug for the pairing.
I'm really glad that you found Felicity. And I hope you find your way back to her. And Ollie, I know that I am not the love of your life. But you will always be the love of mine.
Many fans found this disrespectful to Laurel's character, to her history with Oliver, and even to the Felicity ship, as it felt as if the writers were attempting to fix the damage they had inflicted upon the Felicity-Oliver pairing in the clumsiest and most heavy-handed way possible. More than any other narrative punishment the writers put Laurel through, her death fully cemented the disrespect and disdain the writers had towards her character. It made little sense to kill her off at the height of her popularity, especially since they had spent the previous season molding her into the superhero she was. More egregiously, the writers refused to bring Laurel back from the dead, despite the fandom clamoring for it, and in spite of the fact that several other characters on the show had been resurrected previously.
What else do I have to bring for her when she comes out of this, Lazarus pit thing?
I would do anything for your daughter. But I destroyed the pit months ago.
Okay, well, there's gotta be, something else.
I am so very sorry.
So you don't help me? Fine. I'll find some other way to bring it back.
Amazingly, their mistreatment of Laurel continued after her death, with the introduction of Dinah Drake and her rushed development into becoming the new Black Canary. Instead of allowing the title to rest in peace along with Laurel, the writers decided that they needed to have a Black Canary on Team Arrow, and rather than resurrect the true Canary, they forced the replacement Dinah into the role, giving her Laurel's famous canary cry from the comics, and going so far as to have Laurel's own father grace her with the mantle.
This may hurt a bit.
Just saying, Canary.
Actually, it's Black Canary.
But perhaps the worst disrespect shown to Laurel Lance in her memory was the introduction of Earth 2 Laurel, a dark shadow of the original character and a way for the writers to rub salt in the wounds of both the characters and the fandom. As fan demand for Katie Cassidy to return to the series increased, the writers were faced with a dilemma: how to bring back Laurel Lance without admitting that they were wrong to kill her off in the first place. Their solution was to introduce Black Siren, an Earth 2 villain who first appeared on The Flash and made a few brief appearances in Season 5 of Arrow. As a completely different character, not to mention being a villain, the writers were free to punish and humiliate Laurel in ways they weren't able to with her original counterpart. Used as a poor substitute for the true Laurel, Earth 2 Laurel never really stood a chance, doomed forever to walk in the shadow of her Earth 1 counterpart, constantly compared to her and having all of the expectations of Earth 1 Laurel's father and former lover placed upon her shoulders.
Are you like my Laurel?
Hardly at all.
Black Siren will never be able to be her own character or her own person, and this is perhaps the biggest insult to Laurel's character as a whole. Instead of bringing back a character who grew to be beloved and admired by the fandom, the writers replaced her with a literal shadow of her former self, who will never be a fully realised character. Instead, will be doomed forever to be a stinging reminder of what the show and the fandom has lost.